Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. I'm riding solo this week, first episode of the new year. We're going to do a 2020 wrap-up. We're going to talk about my favorite movies of 2020. We're going to talk about some honorable mentions, and then we'll close everything out with some worst movies of the year. If you didn't get around to seeing these movies, you should avoid them upon my recommendation. You understand? You understand? Oh, it's going to be such a wonderful time. So flighty. So beautiful, you know? So yeah, first episode of the year. Good times. Trying to get back on track. I want to make sure we get one of these up every week. So we're reaching out to some people. We're trying to figure out ways to kind of do episodes. Also, you just might have more episodes with just me. Which means I have to prepare more. Because if I want to make it like substantial, you know, to talk to myself, I'm actually going to have to do some of all the heavy lifting. You know, it's what's nice when you have like a co-host or somebody to talk to. They've done half of the work, right? And you never know where those conversations are going to go, and it brings up new things, and it's kind of organic, especially with the crew that we got, whether that's Danimal from Zoobox Corporate, Dan Profit, or Big Paul. Like, we all have a good chemistry, and we all kind of bring what we bring to the thing, but not everybody always has time to do this stuff. So, yeah, moving forward, we're gonna innovate, we're gonna get creative in the new year, try to make something of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. But without further ado, let's just get into it. Let's get into what I thought of 2020. It was a weird year for movies, right? Theaters closed, studios shuffling, pushing back things, trying out this VOD streaming platform stuff. With, I guess, kind of mixed results. It's kind of hard to say whether or not it would be long-term successful. I guess the biggest test we're going to see is Warner Brothers putting out their slate of originally theatrically released movies, day and date on HBO Max. Now, there's a lot of their kind of affiliates and a lot of other studios, like Legendary Pictures, for instance, that are kind of upset. So we'll see if that actually happens. You know, they're trying to basically, I think at this point, Dune is pretty much off the table for HBO Max because it's such a huge investment for Legendary Pictures, and they put up most of the money. Warner Brothers is more just the distributor. So as it goes on, we're going to see how this model evolves, and I guess we won't really know until some big tentpoles are tested back out in the market. So you're going to have things like Black Widow. That's still going to be a theatrical thing. The new Fast and the Furious movie. Those are kind of the two new testing grounds to see if people will actually go to the movie theaters, because those are big, broadly popular, broad interest kind of movies where everybody goes to the movies to see those kind of things. Well, I don't, but a lot of people do, right? That's the movie that if you're the type of person that only goes to see one movie a year, you end up going to see one of those movies. They tried that with Tenet, right? That's when they first tested the waters. Warner Brothers kind of pushed that out. A lot of people blaming Chris Nolan for that. Not so true. I know he definitely wanted it out in the theaters, and he wanted to help theatrical exhibition. Like, he's a very big proponent of the theatrical experience in movie theaters. So he was supportive of it, but it wasn't his idea to put it out in the end of August or September. And that ended up, severely underperforming. They lost a shit ton of money on Tenet. Tenet comes out in a normal year, in a normal summer. That's like probably one of the probably top 3 movies of the year, gross, right? So it's really interesting to see what happens. The silver lining, I would say, if there is one to be had here, is that this could be the return of the mid-budget movie. Now, I've kind of talked about this on some live streams and maybe a past episode or two, but I think that's really what we're looking at here. So we're going to see the return of the smaller movie. More innovative. Stories that aren't so, I don't know, IP dependent maybe. You know, because that's the thing. They just put these movies out to be like these big names. You know what Marvel is. You know what DC is. You know who fucking, I don't know, you know who Iron Man is at this point. You know who, like, the superheroes are. It has nothing really to do with who's behind the camera or the quality of the films often. It just ends up being kind of people just reflexively going towards something they already know. That's why superheroes, remakes, and reboots are generally where the studio tries to kind of go towards. So it could change the landscape, and it could change for the better, honestly. You might have a lot more interesting projects kind of make their way through the studio system instead of being relegated completely to things like Netflix or Hulu or whatever. Because a lot of times, I don't know what it is. I know Netflix goes like kind of internationally and buys up a lot of movies, and then they put them out and they call them international. Hold on, I'm going to shut this music off. They call them kind of international. What? Lost my train of thought because of that music, that the Dracula music or that spooky music. Just was like, whoa. Yeah, they scoop them up. They put them on their platforms, and they're always, and even the ones that they actually independently produce are kind of like these mid budget, really kind of low budget. Sometimes they can get some names attached to them, to garner interest and whatnot, but oftentimes they're not very good. I don't know what it is about like kind of Netflix, like, hey, good filmmakers, do whatever you want model that makes them put in kind of less than great work. Why is somebody like David Fincher, or the only person that I think has kind of escaped that was Martin Scorsese. I mean, he made a very indulgent movie, I suppose you could say. I mean, it's like 3.5 hours long with The Irishman, but I think it's still a solid movie. It's just as good as anything Scorsese would have made, even in a more traditional setting. But somebody like, like David Fincher would be an example. Michael Bay. Who else? There's been some other big names that have done Netflix movies. And there's something about, like, I guess, having that creative freedom that actually hurts them a little bit. Necessity being the mother of invention, adversity with the studio and having to kind of really fight for the things that you want to put on screen. But when you're just allowed to do whatever you want, there's kind of a deficit there, in my opinion. Like, it's just not, I don't know. It's just not, it's not creatively fruitful to like just get whatever you want. And I think we've kind of seen that a few times with some, especially the Netflix movies. The Amazon one seems like they fare a little bit better, but I think the Amazon system, the Amazon like original movies or whatever, is a little bit more traditional in terms of kind of the way it works. Now, Amazon television is generally, they're really low budget, kind of simple. They harken back a lot more to kind of traditional, almost network TV, just that it's able to have an edge because it's on a streaming service, so they swear and stuff. There's been a few standouts. There's been a few things I've meant to check out. Like, I've always meant to check out the Jack Ryan series, the one with the dude from The Office. What's his name? I don't remember his name right now, but you know who I'm talking about. I've always meant to check that out, but they just get buried. That's the worst part about streaming services. Everything gets fucking buried in the algorithm. There's so many things I'm like, oh, cool, I want to check this out. I want to watch this. And then, I don't know, by like the next day, I've forgotten about it, and it's been completely buried by the system. Netflix especially is kind of awful about promoting their own material, their own stuff. I don't think they put a ton into marketing. That's why they drop trailers so close to release. A lot of times you won't really know too much or even be aware of something that's going to be like a Netflix original film. It's like a month out. And I think they do that on purpose. I think they do that so they don't have so much responsibility to market the movie. And then their own systems just kind of bury it. It's just, I don't know, it's so weird. Such a weird landscape right now. So much garbage out there. Like, and is it going to get better? Like, we're talking about the return of the mid-budget stuff. The return maybe of some more responsible filmmaking. Like, why is every big movie that comes out has to make $1 billion to be profitable? Is kind of an insane model. That's an insane way to live. Even for studios. Like, you are really, like, I mean, your margins are so razor thin at that point if you need to make $1 billion. I mean, sometimes a studio gets lucky and they'll make something that's kind of a mid-budget movie. Like, I don't even know, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but something like Joker is like a very mid-budget. That's a mid-budget movie. It's probably like $100 million movie. Which is crazy to say that that's a mid-budget movie, but that's expensive, but, not by the standards of most big tentpole movies. And that just ends up being a zeitgeist thing. It catches on. Joaquin Phoenix's performance probably has a lot to do with that, and people were excited to see it. That movie makes $1 billion. Now, I don't think Warner Brothers probably thought that was a $1 billion movie. So every once in a while, you get lucky on something. But it's so weird. It has to be attached to like this notion of Joker. There's no reason to call that movie Joker. There's no reason to even imply or infer or use those characters or anything. There isn't. You can just make that movie its own thing. I mean, it's a ripoff of just, I guess, okay, quote-unquote ripoff, an homage to what? Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, two of Scorsese's kind of best 70s and 80s movies, both starring Robert De Niro. So, yeah. But anyways. Yeah, it's kind of just a crazy way to run a company. If you have to actually kind of have that level of success to make your movies worth making. I don't know. I was hoping people would. I mean, at some point I was just like, I'm kind of a nihilist. I'm just like, I hope people just stop going to these things. Like, force them to do something different, to be more creative. You can make the argument, I suppose, DC in the past couple of years has had to kind of change track because of perceived failures of the Snyderverse, and then having that vocal fan base kind of coming back into the fold with it. But they were, if I have any positive thing to say about like the superhero stuff with the DC stuff especially, is that all those movies kind of feel unique. They all feel like they're a little bit more authored, more of the directors, more of the creative teams. They don't feel like they have this overarching tone and style in the same way that Marvel does, right? Because Marvel, every movie is like the same movie. It's the same story. It's the same beats. They're very cookie cutter. They're very manufactured almost. It's like you put that shit on an assembly line. It's all Paul Feig or whatever his name is. I think that's his name, right? No, Paul Feig directed Ghostbusters. Something Feig. I don't know. Guy's a Feig. Guy sucks. But anyways, let's just get into the best honorable mentions, worst. We'll talk about it all today. We're gonna have a great time. Are you ready? Let's go. Best movies of 2020. So, also, if you don't like listening to this podcast or whatever, you've made it this far, by the time this is published on YouTube, I'm going to leave a link. You can go read. There's a written version of this. I'm not going to read the article on here. We're just going to talk generally. But I sat down. I wrote out my stuff. I try to do that every year. Do my kind of end of year wrap up with movies. I try to write it down. Now, if you do read it, take it easy on me. I'm very rusty. I didn't do a ton of writing in 2020, which is crazy because I was stuck at home so much. But I guess I was just trying to figure out Zoobox. But yeah. Well, actually, no, I did do a lot of writing, just not for public consumption. I forgot. I was in college for half the year. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the honorable mentions. Now, we've talked about this a few times on Zoobox Goes to the Movies, both in the daily movie reviews, and Big Paul and I kind of touched on it one of the last Christmas episodes we did. It's Fat Man, directed by Esham and Ian Nelms. Now, Fat Man, if you don't know, story of it's kind of like a grounded, gritty, low-key kind of Santa Claus tale where Mel Gibson plays kind of a rough and gruff Santa Claus type dude, and he's kind of lost his way. He's lost the Christmas spirit himself. He's become disillusioned with his place in the world and what effect he has on people. And then there's all these interesting layers of kind of the nature of his job and how he gets subsidies from the government for delivering presents. But if kids are being bad, and there's kind of a rash of ill out there in the world, bad attitudes with kids, he doesn't meet his quota. He doesn't get paid. So he's forced to take on a military contract. And that's only half the movie. That's only half the story. And then there's this kind of parallel story with a kid that gets cold, that decides to hire a hitman to go kill Santa Claus, and yada, yada, yada. And then they go down at the end to a final confrontation. But this is a better than it should be movie. I did not love the director's previous films. Small Town Crimes. I believe it's on Netflix. It was another movie they made. They're kind of like very Hollywood dudes, trying to make movies. They have like this kind of very superficial, shallow take on what is cool or what is interesting or what makes something work. I was listening to an interview with them. after I watched the movie, and they are very kind of just they come off like very hollow, shallow. Like, they're excited to talk about what they're talking about, but the motivations, they did not think very deeply about what they were doing. This is all like superficial, it's all artifice. So, and I think there is an emotional disconnect in something like Fat Man, which would keep it off of like my best of the year, right? Because there's just something amiss with the subtext and developing interesting characters. It's just too surface level. Having said that, though, Mel Gibson's great. Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who plays Mrs. Claus, is great. Walton Goggins as the hitman is great. It's worth watching just for that. So I would say even if you're just going to watch it one time, it would be worth it. It would be totally worth it, especially in 2020. It actually ended up doing pretty well, just because of all COVID, no new movies. The VOD stuff, they were able to market this correctly. Mel Gibson, whether you like him or not, is still a draw, and people would find the idea of Mel Gibson playing a gritty, gruff Santa Claus interesting, engaging. I certainly did. That's why I checked it out. Moving on, we're going to be talking about 2020's The Trip to Greece, directed by Michael Winterbottom. Now, I don't know how many people out there are going to be familiar with the Trip movies. There's been a few of them. I think the first one is just called The Trip. Stars Steve Coogan and what's this guy's name? Brandon? I can't remember the other guy. I'm drawing a blank right now, unfortunately. But these guys, they work together. This is the fourth in a series of movies. They've done The Trip to Italy, The Trip to Spain, and now The Trip to Greece, which, if rumors are true, I believe this is the swan song for the series. They've been making it since about 2011. They've been coming out. One would come out every couple of years. And I'm not sure why I like these movies, because they're kind of movies, kind of like documentaries, kind of just like hangout flicks. You just kind of hang out with these two guys that are friends, and they kind of give each other shit, and they make jokes, and they're always trying to one-up each other. There's also a little bit of kind of a meta quality to it, where it's dissecting kind of opulence and the nature of celebrity and narcissism. They play kind of shitty versions of themselves. But most of the footage is just their candid hanging out stuff. Like it is if you were hanging out with your friend, somebody that you trust, like a good friend, like you would behave this way with them. And you would kind of have fun being heels to each other. This is something that's a great, it's quintessential male bonding stuff. And I think the movie, this one in particular, is one of the better ones. I'd say it's probably, out of the four, maybe the second best one. I think the first one is probably strikes the balance the best. But this one also has kind of a little bit of a meditation on kind of midlife, end of life, the things you have, and kind of trying to make some sort of commentary about, the narcissism of Steve Coogan's character, and about how lonely he actually is because of that. It doesn't really get too much into it. It doesn't go too deep into stuff. There's a lot of implied stuff, a lot of inferred stuff. So you kind of have to be paying attention. But I think overall, if you liked the other ones, or if you just kind of like really casual hangout movies, I mean, I don't know. I cannot say this is for everybody. It's really not. It's kind of pretentious and snooty at times as well. So I'm not even really sure why I like them. Like I said, there is something about them that I don't quite understand that appeals to me. So there you go. It might be just honestly, it might be just Coogan and Bryden there. Just their relationship and just their chemistry. And I actually sincerely find Steve Coogan to be a very funny guy. I really enjoy Steve Coogan as a performer. So there you go. It's probably that. Next up is I'm Thinking of Ending Things, directed by Charlie Kaufman. This is an adaptation of a book of the same name. I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head. This is also kind of a pretentious movie. Definitely not for everybody. It is weird. It is abstract. Has its head firmly lodged up its own ass. But there is something. It's kind of a meditation or a dissection of life. of parts of or what did I say? Like rites of passage of growing old, of relationships, and how those affect you and how they affect the people around you, and why do you ultimately stay with a person. And then it has like this super meta layer, which is par for the course for Charlie Kaufman. If you don't know who Charlie Kaufman is, he wrote like Being John Malkovich, Adaptation. He directed and wrote Synecdoche, New York. This is his latest movie, and it's very much in line with those things. They're ponderous. They kind of make you a little anxious in a certain way. The characters are often annoying, and you're not really supposed to like them all the time. I think that's actually part of the point of it. It's like something you're just not actually meant to enjoy parts of these movies. And I would say I'm thinking of ending things is something that asks you to kind of wallow in the misery with these characters. And there's a big meta layer to the movie though, and it's something you could actually not even understand is happening. This thing is stacked with literary references, going from everything from just film criticism to art culture stuff to actual ancient works like ancient Greek stuff. Like there are so many layers to the movie. It's really easy to miss stuff. It's one of those movies where it's just like, I don't think it's for everybody, but I probably would recommend it if you're like kind of a cineast, if you're into film. I would recommend it to you. And even though I would say that you might not enjoy it, because there's so many interesting things going on. Like Kaufman isn't super interesting filmmaker. He has something to say. He does very idiosyncratic, very much unique personal works, you know? That's where his position comes from. I would say it's kind of like an amalgamation between like Anomalisa, which is the movie he did with puppets. He did a puppet movie a couple of years ago. I think that was the last thing he wrote and directed. And not so much Being John Malkovich. Well, I guess it has a little bit of Being John Malkovich in it. Adaptation as well. Like it's kind of actually it feels kind of like a culminating work now that I'm starting to think about it. Now I'm starting to roll it around in my head a little bit. It's one of the ones I never like. I watched it and I was gonna do a video about it, and then time went by, and then I was like, "Fuck! If I'm gonna really talk about it, like I need to watch it again." And then just getting up the gumption to watch it again, and also just having the time to do it, it never fell into place. But maybe I'll do like a whole deep dive on it later in the year or something, because I would like to revisit it. Like, I'm not sure I totally kind of got every bit of it the first time I watched it, you know? Because like I said, the third act is becomes so abstract, you might actually miss what the movie's about. Like it's so subtle and it does not hold your hand and it doesn't really tell you. So some definitely some interesting stuff. I would say check it out just for that. Next movie. Next honorable mention. The Way Back, directed by Gavin O'Connor. Gavin O'Connor did a few years ago do that movie Warrior. It's got kind of the same kind of vibe and tone. It's a very kind of emotionally earnest kind of movie about family and about trauma, about making mistakes, moving past them, trying to find yourself in the maelstrom of your own life. The reason to watch this movie is Ben Affleck. He gives the incredibly powerful, intense, sincere performance. One of those things where it's like it works on a meta level because you know about the troubles of his life, and he kind of brings the weight of that stuff to the role. It's also just something I think that people of a certain age, or if you've lived enough life and you've made enough mistakes, like you'll probably find some sort of kinship with his character. You know, I certainly did. I certainly had a lot of empathy for his character in this movie and the desire to do better, even though you have self-destructive tendencies, let's say. So I would say definitely worth checking out. Not the best movie of the year. I think Gavin O'Connor is an okay director. I kind of felt the same way about Warrior. I was like, oh, well, the performances are way better than this movie because the movie is a little bit rote, it's a little formulaic, it's a little predictable. I would say The Way Back kind of is too. Like, there's nothing happens in The Way Back that's going to surprise you. But the performance is so good that I kind of have to. I kind of got to say, check this out. This is probably some of the best work Affleck's done. And if you like Ben Affleck, and who doesn't like Ben Affleck as an actor, at least, You owe it to yourself to check it out. The last of the honorable... Oh, no. Actually, I got two more honorable mentions. Whoa. Promising Young Woman. Now, this just came out. I just saw this recently. Me and my wife actually headed out to the theater. We checked it out on December 26th, the day after Christmas. We actually found somebody to babysit our kids because they were staying with us. It's hard to find somebody to babysit your kid. You know, everybody's life is so crazy. So we don't often get to go to the movie theater together. Usually we have to go separately if we really want to see it that bad. But this time we got to go together, and I was happy to get to go see this with my wife because it's more of a female-centric movie. It is much more about kind of the female experience. There are certain kind of things and aspects and knowing moments of this movie that I have no experience with. Now, intellectually, I can like understand it and we could talk about it, but I don't actually know. So I think she probably actually got a little bit more out of the movie than I did. I think that it's a good movie. It's very well made. Emerald Fennell, this is, I think, her feature film debut. She's mostly an actress. I think she's been on The Crown and a few other things. She makes a cameo in this movie as well, but I don't think that everything in this movie works really well. I think it's actually a little bit oversimplified. There's a kind of a pedantic nature to the subtext and what it's actually trying to get at and talking about, and ends up being kind of self-refuting a few times. I think that the morality of the movie is way too simplistic for what it's actually about. And it robs the movie of some power and some pathos and some kind of the gray area of a lot of this stuff. It doesn't really, it kind of justifies some things that you're like, nah, I don't know about that. At least that's how it appeared to me. That was my reading on the first time I watched it. But the lead performance by Carey Mulligan is one of the best of the year. It's a great lead performance. The movie is really snappy. It's paced very well. It's funny. The chemistry with Bo Burnham, he does really well in this movie. So, like, you know, that's why it's an honorable mention and not like, oh, best of the year. You got to make sure you go check that out. Is because, like, I do think it has a lot of problems, and I don't know if repeat viewings would change my mind in either direction. You know, I'll probably find out at some point. Probably watch this again, probably sometime this year. But so I don't know if I would feel differently. Like I said, in either direction. It's kind of just one of those things. But I thought it was interesting enough to definitely recommend to people to check out. And I think it comes out on VOD in a couple weeks, actually, I think. So most people will be able to check it out soon. I think this is the last of the honorable mentions. Unhinged, directed by Derek Bort. The thick boy Russell Crowe performance of the year. Thick boy Russell Crowe coming out angry, coming out hot. He makes this movie for sure. It's a kind of a rote, middle road thriller that is elevated by Russell Crowe's performance and also the willingness of the script and the director to be completely bonkers and completely mean-spirited. There are things that the escalation in this movie is fucking nuts. It's fucking nuts. Unhinged is an appropriate title for this film. And that starts at the very beginning. You're just immediately into it. You're like, wow, this is some crazy fucking shit. This is some crazy shit. And I don't want to say anything else about it because I don't want to give anything away. I did a review when it came out, when I went to go see it, because this was actually one of the first movies, I think, like when theaters started opening back up, like the bigger ones, at least they did for a few months, like Regal and whatnot, that was out. So Unhinged ended up being the #1 movie in America for like 2 months. And that would never happen normally. But hey, listen. If you like movies, you like being entertained by stupid, goofy shit, make sure you check out Unhinged. Go check out Unhinged. Do it for me. I think you'll at least have a good time. That's what I would say. All right, so I got 2 best old movies I saw this year. Both of these have their own individual reviews on the channel, which they're linked in this article. Also, you can just go look them up. First one up is The Passion of Joan of Arc, the 1928 film directed by Carl Theodor Dreyer. This is a fucking amazing movie. I'm so happy I found it this year. It's because I was kind of just going back. I wanted to watch like older movies, get into some silent film. I have a lot of blank spots in that, or not blank spots, but a lot of blind spots rather, in that field, in that vein of that stuff. I just don't like have I would say from like 1920 to 1960, there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of the classics, things like Casablanca or Wizard of Oz, not Sound of Music, Gone with the Wind, The Maltese Falcon. Like I've seen a lot of the big ones, right? So I'm just kind of going in there and trying to fill in some blind spots. Passion of Joan of Arc was something I had always seen. I had always seen this picture. If you're watching it at home, there's a picture of, it's a close-up of the actress Maria Falconetti as Joan. And the story takes place as kind of like the end of Joan of Arc's life, and she's on trial. And it's the trial of Joan of Arc, basically. And the movie is a beautiful, beautiful movie, and it's mostly shot in these extreme close-ups, and it has this kind of German expressionism type of sets that are kind of minimalist and sparse, but big and beautiful. And Carl Theodor Dreyer, 1928, this is the invention of a style. Like this is like Citizen Kane levels of like, you ain't never seen nothing like this. You've never seen something like this before. And even today, I watched it in 2020. I was fucking blown away. I was blown away by how powerful it was, how engaging it was. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. The casting was so perfect for everybody, whether it's the Inquisitors or it's Joan herself, Maria Falconetti, which I cannot say enough. It is one of the great screen performances of all time. That's how taken aback I was by it. Like, of all fucking time. Ain't no joke. Ain't no slouch, this movie. Now, you may think like, oh, I don't want to watch a silent movie. That wouldn't be my thing. I'm not into silent movies. That's too much. That's too movie nerd for me. Give it a shot. Give it a chance. Watch it for a half hour. See how you feel. I have a feeling you'll be more engrossed and pulled in by it than you'd think. And it has, and it's one of these movies that could have been lost as well. So you gotta have respect. Okay? Gotta have respect for this movie. The Passion of Joan of Arc. But yeah, definitely check it out. It's actually on HBO Max or the Criterion channel. So if you have HBO Max, it's on there as part of their Turner Classic Movies section. Which has a bunch of Criterion movies on it. That's where I watched it. HBO Max ended up being like my favorite streaming service of the year because it has a deep bench of like classics. So there you go. And my next one, I only did two. The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, directed by John Huston, the 1948 film with Humphrey Bogart and company. And this is a fucking masterpiece. A masterpiece. I'm embarrassed that I never watched this. Which is kind of crazy because I've seen a lot of Bogart stuff and I've seen a few John Huston movies. I even just actually recently watched his documentary that he made about World War II soldiers returning home with PTSD. John Huston's a great, solid director, and this is one of his greatest movies. It's broadly appealing. It's got fantastic performances. It's funny. It's thrilling. It's dark. Has some very serious kind of dark subtext to the movie. And I don't want to say too much about it, but just please go out and check out The Treasure of Sierra Madre. If you were like, again, like with The Passion of Joan of Arc, if you think that's not something you'd enjoy, you're wrong. A good movie is a good movie, no matter when it's made. The fundamentals here are amazing. The performances are next fucking level. Some of the best acting, some of the best chemistry between like kind of an ensemble that I've seen in such a long time. I was so happy that I randomly put it on one day. I went through a spat where I was like just watching older movies this year. And this happened to be one of them. So check it out. Check it out. All right. And without further ado, let's get into the best movies of 2020. The best ones that I saw anyways. I didn't see everything. There's a bunch of stuff that maybe could have made it on the list that I didn't end up watching. But that's not what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the ones I did see. Some surprises, some no shits, but not all of these got a review this year on the channel. A lot of them did though, and they'll be linked in this article if you want to go check them out. So the first one up is one of my biggest surprises of the year, Murder, Death, Koreatown. This is a movie I just kind of randomly stumbled on. It's a found footage movie that has complete commitment from its creators. The director is anonymous. I couldn't find any information about this movie. Maybe I could now, but when I watched it when it came out, which was I think I watched it in like April. I think so, somewhere around there. I couldn't find any info about it. And what I found was a very kind of interesting, meta, thoughtful found footage movie. And I have a thing for found footage movies. I like kind of a gimmick movie because I like to see if somebody can do something interesting with it or pull it off. You know, every once in a while, one of these found footage movies will kind of break the mold and do something interesting. You know, Murder, Death, Koreatown definitely does that because it has almost like it's like if David Lynch made a found footage movie, and it has all of these crazy kind of interesting layers of what's going on. It starts out as kind of a true crime documentary. It's like this guy's unemployed. Somebody gets killed on his block. So he's like, fuck, I got free time. Like, I'm going to try to figure something out. And then it just escalates into like kind of conspiracy and paranoia and like, how deep does it go? Is this inside of his head? Is it actually what he's showing us the truth? Is he setting us up? Like, you don't ever really know. There's such an unreliable narrator kind of vibe to it, even though you think you're ostensibly watching, you know, just random footage of this dude living his life. Look, he's trying to solve this mystery. But then it does what a lot of these movies kind of never really address, but it uses it to its advantage. It's like, well, who put this together? You know, a lot of times found footage movies that's just not a concern, right? Actually, one of the only, it's like a found footage series that actually addresses that as well was Marble Hornets. It's all on YouTube, I think. It was a YouTube show that they made over like 4 or 5 years. These 3 guys. And that one also kind of answers that question inside the conceit. And this one, while I don't think it directly answers it, it doesn't say it out loud or whatever. It is, it's definitely there though. It's like implied because of some of the things that happen. And I don't want to give it away. It's a really fun, wild ride. I think it's worth your time, even if you are not necessarily into found footage movies, or if you are really into found footage movies, here's something fresh. Here's something kind of original. The next movie is director Josh Trank's Capone. Now, I watched this. I did a really kind of a longer one, too, so I'll keep it brief here. So this is an interesting character study. It's kind of about the end of Al Capone's life, about kind of his dementia from complications from syphilis that he got when he was younger. Working as a bouncer in a whorehouse. And it's just about kind of him losing his mind and about the kind of the police kind of pushing in on him. It does what the cool thing about Capone is, I'd say, other than kind of a character study, and there's this whole thing where this guy is kind of, his life is coming full circle and he has to kind of face the man that he was, and while he's also losing his mind and he doesn't recognize himself anymore. He doesn't recognize the person that did those things. So he's kind of, there's layers of denial. There's some interesting stuff in there. But one of the things I think that it does the best is try to put you in the headspace of him by being unreliable. Like, it's a visually unreliable movie. You never know if what you're looking at is in his head or if it's really happening. And then they do things where you are directly kind of in Capone's POV because people appear and disappear, and he's in rooms and then walks, and then he's in a different room, and when he turns around, like, it does stuff like that kind of constantly throughout the movie just to kind of keep you disorientated. So you really kind of get in the headspace of Capone. I think it's kind of underrated. I know people were not everybody was into it. I think it even made some worst of the year lists. Some of that might have to do with Hardy. It's a very Tom Hardy performance. Like, you know, when Tom Hardy's doing a character and he ends up being kind of big, kind of over the top, and he does like a silly voice, yada, yada, yada. Like, he's doing that thing. That has never bothered me. I even, to some degree, even enjoy that. I look forward to a Tom Hardy performance. So it worked for me. It might not work for you. You might find it too comical. It does, and it also has a very kind of methodical pace. It's really has. I mean, it's not paced poorly, but it has its own rhythm that people might feel is long-winded, even though it's like a 90-minute movie. It actually feels longer than that, though, because you really feel like you were taking the time to kind of sit with somebody kind of losing it. And I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I liked it. In a year that not a ton of stuff came out, they made the list. They made the cut. Next up is The Invisible Man, directed by Lee Winnell. This is his sophomore effort. He did a movie called Upgrade, which I would totally recommend. I think we reviewed this on an old Zoobox Goes to the Movies last year. This was the last movie that I saw in theaters before like all the theaters got shut down in the pandemic. The only real reason I wanted to see this was Leigh Whannell. Like Leigh Whannell is an impressive craftsman. Upgrade is a great debut for a director, especially if you're into kind of cyberpunk genre stuff, near future stuff. Super great director. He's a craftsman. He knows how to build tension, and he was good friends with James Wan. He's worked with James Wan a lot. If you know James Wan, they actually both got their career started with the Saw franchise. Even though they were only really involved in the first one, the Conjuring movies, Insidious. So that's kind of where he comes from. That's his background. And I would say, honestly, as a director, I prefer him to James Wan, even with the genre stuff. There's something really impressive how well he's able to execute on this stuff and actually have like legitimate jump scares that work. They don't feel super telegraphed. The way he uses negative space. I mean, the bad guy in this is an invisible dude. And the movie is really great about sometimes kind of just like, lingering on a shot for just a few seconds too long because the movie is trying to register to you, or he's trying to tell you that there's somebody there. So that's why it holds on the shot. So the whole movie has this great feeling of dread and unease throughout the whole thing. It's the subtext of the movie is a little messy. It's kind of like in the same way that Promising Young Woman was kind of like a Me Too era movie. I would say The Invisible Man is as well. And it depends on how you read the end of the movie in terms of whether or not you think it actually kind of acknowledges its messy morality or not. It's kind of unclear. Because it's just... the thing with these movies is like the blind vengeance thing is suddenly being looked upon as a good quality, maybe. Even if you go back to some of the revenge thrillers from back in the day, like take something like Death Wish. Now, granted, the sequels to Death Wish turns into a kind of a cartoon, but the original one, well, they all have Charles Bronson, but Charles Bronson, late 70s, Death Wish movie, it's not the end of the movie, the conclusion of Death Wish, which is completely undermined by the sequels, but the conclusion of the original Death Wish is not that this is a good thing. It is that this is a hollow, empty pursuit, and you will never be sated. You will never be satiated by anything that you've done here. You'll never know. You can't just blindly go out and kill people you think are bad and feel like you're going to have catharsis or you're going to get something back. And honestly, it ends up just being bad because then at some point, you just get a taste for killing. You just get a taste for it and you become kind of a bad person. There's an interesting twist at the end of the movie where they kind of were setting up that they could maybe even do sequels to this that I found interesting. But I thought the way the framing was plausible. I really liked the performances. I thought, what's her name? Elizabeth Moss was pretty good in this movie. I'm not even a huge Elizabeth Moss fan per se. I've never watched The Handmaid's Tale. I thought she was okay in Mad Men as Peggy. To some point until they just kind of the writing gets bad for her character. But she's a good actress. She's good in this. And but the real star is the director. I would say the real star is the director of this movie, and that's what makes it ultimately one of the best movies of the year. Next movie is one I actually watched recently. I recently caught up with this. I was trying to watch just catch up with some of the stuff that people had, reviewed well. Things I not just blindly, but I was like, things that maybe might make my list, right? This is called The Wolf of Snow Hollow, directed by Jim Cummings. This is his second movie. This is follow-up to a movie called Thunder Road. And it is kind of a horror, comedy, mystery, psychodrama kind of movie. Where it's really more, the subtext of the movie is really kind of about the male id and the male ego and about kind of legacy and responsibility. And are you a slave to kind of your your genetics or your family line, your family history? The director, Jim Cummings, is also the star of the movie. And he puts in a good, fun performance. Kind of even, you could you could say a brave performance, I guess, because he's kind of such a shitbag. You don't really like him, and he's working through kind of a midlife crisis during everything. Yeah, and it ends up having a decent little kind of murder mystery that's going on. There's a parallel there between kind of they think a werewolf might be out killing people, and then kind of the main character's kind of unchecked rage that he has and how he explodes emotionally on people. Then they try to draw some parallels there between what's going on in the town and his personal life to some success. It's a little muddled. There's also a lot of things about kind of how women have to deal with men, because the most competent person in the movie is his partner or his coworker, who's like a female sheriff, and there's some little small asides to how she feels about like what's going on, his behavior and his attitude, and like this kind of there's an unrequited sense to her where you feel like she's like this perpetual maternal figure in the life of all of these like dipshit guys. And some of that stuff works. It was not super heavy-handed, although, I mean, there's a few moments where you're like, okay. But, like, for me, it's all about writing. I don't mind social messaging or subtext or whatever, but keep it in your subtext. Like, don't spell it out for me. Because it's patronizing, and it feels just condescending, and often just is bad. It's just clunky. All right, next movie up is Another Round, directed by Thomas Vinterberg, starring Mads Mikkelsen and some other guys, some Swedish film, I believe. So yeah, I was interested in seeing this because I like Mads Mikkelsen a lot. Actually, he's one of my favorite kind of current working actors, and also because this team had worked together before on this movie called The Hunt. I think it's 2014 that movie came out. That was really good. It was this kind of really good kind of small town drama, mystery drama. I don't want to say too much about it, but it was really good. And this one, they kind of tackle the concepts of middle age and trying to find happiness in your own life and your relationships and kind of what your behavior means to the people around you and how you learn to live with yourself and get out of ruts and whatnot. So there's this group of guys. They're all high school teachers. And they decide to do this experiment where you keep a 0.5 blood alcohol level in you at all times when you're out at school and you're working and you're in the public. And it's supposed to, because your inhibitions are gone. You can let go. You can cut loose. So it's about kind of maintaining a buzz, I suppose you could say, for for an extended period of time and while you're doing kind of regular life stuff and see how that works out for you. The performances are great. It's a kind of a very sweet, tender, funny movie. There is a little bit I found a little bit bothersome a little bit because it kind of obfuscates the responsibility of the other people in your life as if they have no bearing on how you feel or act and it's all your fault. I don't know if that's just kind of the limited scope of the story itself. So maybe we don't see enough of his interactions with the rest of his family or whatnot, but there was something I felt a little scapegoaty, a little off, a little unfair, maybe even to the main character. But overall, one of the better movies of the year, and really enjoyed it. Had a good time watching it. Next up, Color Out of Space, directed by Richard Stanley. This is his kind of return. This is the first feature film he's made since, oh gosh, long time. Is it the first thing he's made since like back in the 90s? Since he got booted off of, what's it called? The Island of Dr. Moreau. You remember the Island of Dr. Moreau from the 90s? Well, Richard Stanley, that was his movie. And he got fired a couple weeks into filming and replaced by somebody else. So this is his, I guess his big return. He's a very eccentric, very weird guy that's into kind of spiritualism and the occult stuff, and obviously loves H.P. Lovecraft. So this is a direct adaptation of an H.P. Lovecraft story of the same name. And I actually read the short story after I watched the movie, and I was kind of impressed at the adaptation and how well Stanley kind of modernizes, but also stays very faithful to the source material. Like the spirit of the short story is very much in place here, and a lot of the same beats are here as well. It changes the perspective of where the story is coming from or who's telling the story. Excuse me, but I think it ends up being really good. It's a low budget movie. You got to take that for what it is. You got a crazy Nicolas Cage performance. You like kind of the stereotypical Nicolas Cage crazy stuff. He delivers here. It reminds me a lot of this older Nicolas Cage movie called The Vampire's Kiss, where he does this kind of British fop character. You'll see moments in this movie where he's doing that performance, and there's a reason why he's doing it, but interesting nonetheless. It's a fun genre movie. It's got some great special effects, some great practical stuff. If you're into that kind of stuff, it does feel like a movie that could have come out maybe in like the late 80s or early 90s. It has that kind of scope, that vibe to it. Maybe actually might have even been better if it had come out at that time, because I think you would have had a more of a grittiness to the movie. One of the problems I think with modern low budget movies, because not all of them can figure out how to do this, is like there's especially with digital filmmaking, there's a kind of a cleanness to it all that I don't love. You know, I like a little grain. I like the texture of film, especially with stuff like this, especially with like kind of genre horror stuff. I like that little extra kind of tangible sense to it. And so if I had a complaint, I'd say that maybe it's a little too clean looking, but I think it's totally worth your time, though. Totally worth your time. Next up is Possessor Uncut by Brandon Cronenberg. That's right. This is David Cronenberg's son. This is his second movie. The first one was Antiviral. Came out back in 2012, I think. And I liked Antiviral. It's not like a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly very interesting. He's very much like his dad, interested in kind of body horror and intellectual, philosophical, science fiction horror stuff. I guess that'd be the way I would put it. And Possessor is no different. Possessor is kind of like this grounded take on kind of body swapping and possession. They kind of almost take like a cyberpunk tack with it, where you have these people that are literally hired and tasked with possessing other people to do things. Even to commit crimes, to assassinate people, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a story about like one of these possessors, this woman that possesses the body of this young man, and how she's starting to lose herself, and he starts to lose himself, and like where do these lines get blurred about who is who and what means what to who, and how do you care about things, and if the possessor is getting too into the murder stuff and all sorts of stuff. It's a movie basically about identity and about which kind of felt prescient. It feels a little kind of like it echoes some modern social stuff, especially with the conversation surrounding like trans people and whatnot. It definitely feels like that is in there in the subtext of the movie about like, is your body who you are, et cetera, et cetera. Can you be born in the wrong body with the wrong kind of life things? I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff. I don't want to spoil too much. I definitely was more underwhelmed the second time I watched it than I was the first time. The first time it gets me because the aesthetics of it, the tone, and the pace of the movie is exactly my bag. It's the kind of thing that I really like. When I watched it again, I kind of found it a little more shallow than I had the first time. The guy just kind of I gave the benefit of the doubt maybe too much. And I was just like, well, there's some deep stuff in here. And then you kind of watch it again, and all of the crazy violence and the concept and everything is kind of washed over you. You're able to kind of move on from it. And it kind of reveals a shallowness to it. It doesn't get deep enough into anything that kind of goes on, or the characters. There's too much of a clinical distance with some of this stuff. Like, I needed to know more about who some of these people were to actually give a shit about them to some degree. I would say that as Brandon, as a failing, as not being like his dad. If you watch, the 80s Cronenberg era stuff, he's able to balance those things very well. Take for instance something like The Fly, or this would be closer to something like Videodrome, I would say, in the sense that it's like not as it's very intellectually engaging, but maybe not like kind of doesn't really pull at your heartstrings or turn on those empathy centers. It doesn't really do that. I don't think it's successful in that, but still one of the cooler movies of the year. I'm really happy I got around to watching it. The next movie is A Cheat. That's right. You're going to say I'm cheating. We're talking about the recently released Devs, directed by Alex Garland. Now, this is technically like a limited series or a mini series, whatever you want to call it. To me, it's like an 8-hour movie. I don't know. I really, really love this show. I wanted to put it on this list because I want more people to check it out. It's something that completely kind of got ignored. Alex Garland is like maybe one of the only dudes right now working in like hard sci-fi stuff. You know, he's kind of got a preoccupation with things like with artificial intelligence and the nature of kind of bioorganisms melding with technological type organisms that we are creating. There's like and that's what kind of surrounds a lot of his stuff. Even if you go back and watch the movie from 2019, Annihilation, which is a great movie. Or is it 2018 did Annihilation come out? Maybe it came out in 2018. Shit. But Annihilation was another great kind of discussion about this, but it takes it from the kind of the organic standpoint. And then before that, he had directed Ex Machina. I mean, he's been a writer for a long time. He worked with Danny Boyle. He did like Sunshine, The Beach, which is based on his own novel. But these are his preoccupations. And with devs, he really gets into it. He gets into kind of like the God algorithm territory and about fatalism and determinism and string theory. And there's so many different cool things that the show gets into. And some really interesting characters and a very interesting performance by Nick Offerman. It's the best thing he's ever done. It's the most interesting thing he's ever done. He's a kind of out of left field choice for a role like this, but I thought he nailed it. Even the main actress, who's also very good. I can't remember. Her name's escaping me at the moment, but she was very good as well. And it's got a great pace and tone. It's kind of got this techno thriller kind of aspect to it, while also dealing with a lot of these heady philosophical concepts in terms of kind of creators and creations and what it all means, etc., etc. I really love this show, and I think people should check it out. So there you go. That's why it's on here. And that's all the explaining I'm doing. Next up is Let Him Go. Let Him Go, directed by Thomas Bazooka. I believe this is his second feature film. This is just a really, really, really solidly made adult drama with some beautiful, beautiful performances. This is the best thing Costner's done in 20 years. Diane Lane and him, they have fantastic chemistry. I love their characters. I love the kind of the epic nature of this small story. There's something about like the backdrop of the Midwest. I think they're in like Montana and Wyoming. And I've spent some time out there too, so I have some kind of personal references for it. But it's like they're going on this grand, almost like Lord of the Rings epic adventure to go get their grandson, and all these things, and learning how to kind of cope with the death of their son, and trying to preserve his legacy in some way that makes sense to them, and coming to terms with all that stuff. It's a beautiful movie. It's got so many great layers. Now, not like a perfect movie, and I think actually if you watch the trailer sells you something that's a little bit not what the movie is. This trailer is a little bit more like, I don't know, what would I say? Makes it look like kind of more of an action thriller. It's not. It's kind of a quiet character study. But it's punctuated by these really great, memorable performances. So even when it does kind of get into slightly thriller-esque territory, it all works. It's one of the bigger, pleasant surprises I had for the year. All right, we are at our number one movie for the year. We're number one. Let's talk about Tenet. That's right, Tenet, directed by Christopher Nolan, written by Christopher Nolan, everything by Christopher Nolan. I would be surprised if he didn't act out all of the parts before he let his actors in. A consummate professional. This is his another one of his big populist, popcorn munching, crazy, a little bit smarter than it needs to be science fiction movies. We've covered this movie a few times on the channel. So there's a spoiler free review I did right after I saw it, and then Dan and I did a spoiler cast, like a long form spoiler cast about it once he saw it in the because we both went to the theater and saw it. I would say this. The only thing I really have to say, I guess, talking about the movie is like this movie caught a ton of shit. I think because of the pandemic, the circumstances it came out, so the critics were like kind of incredibly hostile to the movie. I don't know if I wouldn't say it's like Nolan's best movie, but even like a okay Nolan movie is better than most that comes out. But the thing that I find so frustrating in a landscape that is nothing but fucking garbage, there's nothing but these garbage commercial movies in terms these superhero movies and just sequels and reboots and whatever. You have a guy that's going out there making these big popcorn populist movies, these standalone original concepts, original IPs, pulling off some of the best action set pieces in the ever in the history of mankind, in the history of cinema. The guy has a deep love and appreciation for the concept of cinema and what it means and what a camera does. I was watching the making of this actually last night, and the way he describes it, he's like, this is a story. He's like, the cool thing about this kind of stuff, about the relationship between the camera and time, is the first time that humans ever got to experience something that isn't just linear time, that isn't just normal, everyday pace. You know, that's the first time film allowed you to see slow motion. Film allowed you to see things go backwards. Before that, that was not a thing. People didn't get to see that kind of stuff until like the late 1800s. In terms of, you know, so it's kind of opened up the door, all these possibilities. And when he takes that kind of concept in Tenet and just runs with it. I mean, Tenet is full of some of the most exciting action I've ever seen. And seeing it on camera, on the big screen, I actually went to see it in IMAX as well, like, was awesome. It was a fantastic experience. It makes the best argument about why the theatrical experience is probably worth preserving, is going to see something like Tenet. You know, it's a little bit messier than a lot of his other movies, and I think he's getting better at the exposition dumping stuff, like learning how to exposition dump in more interesting ways. I would still say Interstellar is probably my favorite Nolan movie, but I'd maybe put this like number 3 if I were to rank Nolan movies. I don't know. Now I'm just kind of thinking on the fly here. How would I rank the Christopher Nolan movies? Interstellar, I think that's just from becoming a dad. Interstellar became like my favorite. Maybe Interstellar, Inception, Tenet? Then what? Insomnia? Dark Knight? I don't know. You know what? It'll be fun. Maybe one of these days when I don't have a guest or something, I can go and we'll rank all the Nolan movies. Might be fun. Anyways, so that does it for the best movies of the year. Now we're gonna briefly go into some of the worst movies of the year. I didn't take a ton of time to do anything special or anything like that. I didn't include it in that article that I wrote because I don't know. I wasn't going out purposely watching bad movies this year either. Like sometimes I'll go out and seek something that I think is bad. In fact, sometimes when something gets mediocre or bad reviews, it makes me more excited to see it. That's how I felt about even Wonder Woman 84, which is not on this list. I didn't think it was even close to one of the worst movies I saw this year. But when I heard that it was getting very mixed reviews, I was like, oh, that actually makes me want to watch it. I might not have watched it if it had just been like effusive praise or just got shit on entirely. Actually, if it had been shit on entirely, maybe I would have checked it out. I don't know. There is something glorious about a giant train wreck. But anyways, so these are in no particular order. I didn't have time to order them or anything like that, so we'll just get into it. We'll just check them out, see what we can do here. So the first one we actually reviewed on the channel, me and Danimal from Zoobox Corporate, is Daniel Radcliffe's Guns Akimbo. It's Daniel Radcliffe's. He didn't direct it or anything like that, but Guns Akimbo is a high concept kind of sci-fi movie, kind of a mixture between, I don't know, the social media meets The Running Man. There was a movie that came out a few years ago that has kind of a similar concept called Nerve, with Julia Roberts' like cousin or whatever, or niece, whatever the hell that chick is. But yeah, it's not great. Daniel Radcliffe is not a good actor. It never does anything super interesting with the concept. Like, it has this interesting avenue that it could take. It's kind of a dystopian sci-fi movie where these people get signed up at random to be part of this like this murder, death, kill game show, internet game show. And the movie never does anything interesting with the concept at all. It is so straightforward. It's so kind of contrived and contrite, and I don't know. It was not for me. Did not love it. Next up, Force of Nature. Oh my God, another Mel Gibson co-starring direct-to-video film. Starring co-stars Emil Hirsch and Kate Bosworth. And this was not good. This was bad. I wouldn't even say Gibson was. Gibson actually seemed pretty bored, and he's barely in the movie. So you get Gibson on the poster, you know. I actually did a review of this on the channel, so you can go check that out. But yeah, not a great movie. Even to see Mel Gibson, not a great movie. It's got structural problems. It's got just the storyline itself is just not very good or interesting, and I don't know. Did not scratch the itch for me. Next up, The Tax Collector. Oh my goodness. This is the new David Ayer film. David Ayer, famed director of Fury, End of Watch, Suicide Squad, Bright. Well, this would be more in line with like Suicide Squad. It is a fucking mess. It seems like I don't know what the hell happened with this movie. It is all over the place, and it's crazy because Shia LaBeouf became like a cholo or whatever you call those dudes. He got like a fucking chest tattoo to make this movie. Wanted to get so into character, and it is not worth that kind of effort. Like, it's a bad movie. Shockingly bad. I would say, not like I said, I didn't rank these or anything like this. This is the worst movie I sat through in 2020. I mean, just incoherent and stupid and contrived. And David Ayer does this thing, like, if he does not cast something right, it just falls apart. Like, he needs to have like great actors deliver his material. And then there's some post-production stuff. I don't know what, like, I was willing to give him kind of a pass, right? Because I liked Fury. I liked End of Watch. I thought they were interesting movies. Fury, I probably didn't like it as much as some people, but I thought it showed a lot of promise as a director, right? And then he did like Suicide Squad, and I was kind of willing to give him a pass. I was like, it seemed like the studio really fucked him on that. Then he did Bright. That was not great either. Also, but I didn't really despise it. I just thought it was just like really undercooked. And then you get The Tax Collector. You're like, okay, this is a pattern. Because this is a movie he obviously had way more control of and input, and it's because it's not a super high budget movie or anything like that. And it's about a subject and territory that he seems to enjoy exploring. What did he also do? Harsh Times. Is that the first movie he directed with Christian Bale, who also plays like a Mexican cholo dude? I know I'm not using that term correctly. Don't bother correcting me. Anyways, so next movie on the list, Greed, Michael Winterbottom and Steve Coogan. So same team that does those trip movies we talked about in my honorable mentions. This movie is very wide of the mark. It's supposed to be kind of a satire of opulence of rich people and about the things they care about and how awful they are and how narcissistic they are and how much they mistreat people. And it just does not register very well. I don't think they modulated it very well. Because at the same time, they want to do this kind of satirical critique, but they also want to make a movie with like real characters. And I think that they just don't balance the tone well enough. There's just something off. So you never feel very comfortable sometimes with what's going on or what is being propped up and what is being knocked down. You're never very clear. It's never very clear. Because all of the characters are just awful. Which, it could work. You could do that. I think it's just a balancing thing. Because it's ultimately supposed to be kind of like a dry comedy. I just think it's a little wide of the mark. I just don't think they did a great job with it. Which is a shame, because I like Coogan and Winterbottom. I like, Tristram and Shandy. Like, I've liked them for a long time. So, yeah. You can't win them all, guys. Next up, The Midnight Sky. Oh, one of Netflix big Christmas drops. Directed and written, starred George Clooney. This movie fucking sucks, dude. George Clooney is a phony. He's like a faux intellectual, and the movie's just like, so pretentiously and aggressively like ponderous about the dumbest things. Like it has nothing to say about anything. It's so fucking like just Hollywood pablum. Just bullshit movie. And the storyline, even the plot, the characters, everything's so fucking up its own ass. So contrived. I mean, like, maybe The Tax Collector was like the worst, actually objectively the worst movie I saw in terms of like how they put it together. The Midnight Sky was probably the one that irritated me the most. Like, I have a fucking headache because of this fucking movie. Every time I think about it, I get even more of a headache. The movie gets so bored with itself, it stops to have a sing-along to Sweet Caroline at some point. That's how much this movie doesn't even like itself. But yeah, it's not good. It's just not good. It's south, just south of mediocre, maybe a little further south than mediocre. I don't know. But not a good movie. Not worth your time. Not worth the 2 hours it took to watch this fucking thing. I did not like it. I did not like it. Next up, Vin Diesel Bloodshot. Woo. Oh yeah, Vin Diesel wanted a superhero franchise. So they went to grab one of these like indie IDW or something like that comics. And it is not good. It is not good. I think even it's very much feels like a movie made from like 1999, early 2000 superhero stuff. Vin Diesel is not cool. I know people, maybe they'll disagree with me. Vin Diesel is the least cool, least credible action star out of all these people that get pushed on you in the modern era, but I find Vin Diesel to be so fucking boring. Even when he's being self-aware, which I don't think he's ever self-aware. I think that smart directors know to present him as being self-aware. I don't think he actually is. And this movie is just pure diesel. Pure diesel fuel. And I hated it. I did not like it. I was, actually, to say I hated it is probably a little bit of an overstatement. I was just bored. I was just bored the whole time. And I got one more. One more movie that I did not like this year. I think I know what it is. Scoob, the new reboot of Scooby-Doo. Now, I was in a unique position to kind of judge this movie as my son, got really into Scooby-Doo this past year. He's since forgotten all about it. He doesn't care about it anymore. But there was a hot 3 months where we watched a ton of Scooby-Doo. And we watched a lot of the Scooby-Doo we watched. We were watching like the old show, the old classic show from the 60s. So I was in, but we had gone out, we had branched out, we had watched some of the later stuff from the 80s, stuff from the 90s, stuff from the early 2000s. We watched a couple of like the made-for-TV movies. So I was pretty well versed in Scooby-Doo. And it's just a bad, not only is it a bad Scooby-Doo movie, it's just like a bad kids movie. And it's all over the place. It has just nothing to say. And like, you're just like, oh, you're being too harsh. It's a movie made for kids. No, it's like it's just a bad kids movie. I think, don't think that kids movies can't be good. They can't be interesting. But this was just, even with the caveat of like, it's just a kids movie. Like it was not good. And it kind of, it redraws the characters in a way that's just, I don't know, didn't work for me. I felt like it's in the way that there's the opening sequence of the movie is fantastic. So the opening sequence is like a origin story sequence, where you see them as younger kids kind of checking out spooky houses and stuff. That would have been an awesome movie. Not some dumb superhero movie. That's what it is. It's like it stops being a Scooby-Doo movie and just becomes like very pandering, very broadly appealing, or they tried to make it broadly appealing, like superhero movie. It was very strange. Very strange. Very strange. Okay? So, yeah. That's all I got. That's the end of the episode. Thank God. We made it, everybody. But, yeah. So, that's it for me for 2020. Those are my best and worst of the year. Hoping for good things in the coming year. Hoping to get some nice episodes out. I know we got some stuff on the docket, some tentative things I think people will be excited about, especially if you like cool old genre stuff. I think, people like hearing about those things. I like talking about those things and deep diving. 2021, the year of the deep dive. We're going to come back. We're going to redouble our efforts. It's going to be a good time. Make sure to check out everything else on the channel. We got the semi-daily movie reviews. We got Nightcap on Monday nights. We got Zoobox Live on Wednesday. Then we got the regular Zoobox show on Fridays. Oh my gosh. Popping off with hot content constantly. But I want to thank you all for checking out the video, checking out the channel. And if you'd like to know more about Zoobox, you want to keep up to date with everything Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for Twitter. Also, if you'd like to make a recommendation for a future episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies, or for one of the semi-daily movie reviews, or even just a topic to be discussed, got any interesting kooky videos you want to see watched on Nightcap or Zoobox Live, let me know, and we'll make it happen. All right, everybody. You have the best one ever, ever, ever.